talk a little more about when I was assistant manager at Walmart, just because I didn't really go into as much detail on what I did day to day. But I was a ASM over entertainment, which means I was in charge of electronics, the magazines, and hard lines when the other manager wasn't there. And the co-managers, like one of them, because co-managers they're well paid. I want you to keep this in mind. Like they're making, because assistant manager, if you get a decent bonus, you're making $50,000 a year. Not bad, pretty good. But the co's, you're talking when their bonus is significantly more. If their bonus hits right, they're making $100,000. So it's a good gig if you can get it. But one of them, she started working at Walmart when she was 16. So she'd been there damn near 20 years when I got there, and she was looking forward nothing more than to retirement. She was not that easy to deal with because she wouldn't leave me alone. I never had an idle moment when she called my name over the radio, because you got that radio in your ear, you're never hearing the end of stuff. And she made sure on Thanksgiving that I worked 15 hours because I wanted to leave, but she kept trying to find stuff for me to do because I don't think she liked that I was trying to get out of there on time. So kind of spiteful. The other co, he was a good guy. I liked him. But what he thought made him a good manager was he gave the most notes. He gave you the most stuff to do. And he kind of had that nothing ever good enough mentality. Like there's no such thing as a perfect department. And that doesn't motivate people. It just doesn't. Where no matter what you do, oh hey, you fixed up the department, changed everything, well, you still got this wrong. Instead of saying, hey, good job, let's just work on these things and we'll have everything looking good. He'd never say that. He was never open-handed with the praise, because he had to leave at one point, and there were the guys that worked the back that pulled the truck. They found out he was leaving. He said, I have worked with him for 5 years, and no matter what I've done, he's never told me a good job. So the fact that he's leaving and going somewhere else, we are throwing a party, because I do not like dealing with somebody like that, where nothing's ever good enough. And there's a reason behind his mentality, because remember how I said he made $100,000? Good money, but it's still retail hours and there's a lot of work to it. But his father-in-law was a doctor and he didn't think he made enough money. But where I grew up, if you made $100,000, you were considered rich. I know that's like upper middle class in most places, but where I grew up, if you're making $100,000 or even 70, 80 grand, you've got plenty of money. Like you can live like a king. But the drawback is what's considered rich there is considered just middle class everywhere else. So that guy was forever trying to become a store manager so he could make enough money to appease his father-in-law, which his wife worked too. It wasn't like his wife worked as a doctor. I think she did something, poked things with a stick or did something, but his father-in-law, that wasn't good enough. So I guess that's why he had those high standards that couldn't be done. But he has since, like the female co-manager, she retired. She wanted to be a hygienist. She wanted the hell out of retail. She wanted to actually eat Thanksgiving at home. So she's retired, and I think she works as a hygienist, which is what she always wanted to do. Cool. The other guy, the other co, he ended up wanting to get his own store, and he interviewed and he interviewed and he interviewed, and they pulled the thing they always do when they're like, you do a great job, but we just need to see more of you for this for the next 6 months. And then 6 months rolls by and they find something else. But he got his own store. Now the store manager of the store I was at, he was very hands off. Like, he wasn't going to do anything. He was going to tell other people to do it and tell people about the high standards he had. and he'd walk the store, and he was just, my buddy worked with him in another store, and he called him Pockets, because he always had his hands in his pockets because he wasn't ready to do anything. And I remember one time he wanted some stuff put on a shoe cart. They're very uncommon at Walmart. You don't really see them that often. And they're, I don't know, about 6 feet tall, and you put things on them. That's the best I can describe it. You don't see many of them. They're typically used as a clearance rack. And he wanted me to put something on a shoe cart. And I was like, well, I can't find one. Can I use this? And he walks up and he's like, what did I tell you to put it on? A shoe cart, but I couldn't find. What did I tell you to put it on? A shoe cart, but I couldn't find one that wasn't on. What did I tell you to put it on? So I had to go find a shoe cart. I found one that had groceries on. I was like, hey, can I use this? Yeah, sure. So what I did was I put the groceries on the ground, and guess what happened? Old buddy, the male co-manager, came along. He's like, I can't believe you did that. It's so shameful to see an assistant manager putting stuff on the ground. And these weren't perishable groceries. These were like canned goods. So one boss got on to me for something, and then another one got on to me for doing something the other one told me to do. So I couldn't win that day. I could not. And I'll tell you something else. We had to fire a lot of people. Like, you always had to have two managers. Typically, if there's a female associate and you're a male manager and you need to discipline them, write them up, you need to have a female manager in there, because you couldn't do it by yourself. And that's the right way to do it, because they might be more comfortable talking to a female manager. So I got that, and they'd bring people in, and one girl, she'd been hired 3 months ago, and she'd missed 15 days. And we were just like, look, you don't seem to want to work, so we're going to have to fire you. And another time it was dealing with sexual harassment. Like, this is pretty bad. I don't want to go into too much detail because I think they still work there, but there was a guy who would always do double entendres. You know, like, that's what she said, Michael Scott type deal. And he said it to the wrong person who took it the wrong way, and she just came to us crying. She's like, I can't deal with his talk anymore. And he got in trouble, and poor man had a great sense of humor, but he got in a lot of trouble, and he kind of was quiet after that. And another time, you had to write the guy up for, he's in line at a register buying something, and he's talking to the cashier that we work with. He's like, everything good with you? She said, yeah, I get off in 20 minutes. And he said, can I watch? Yeah, he got fired for that. You can't say shit like that. You just can't. It will get you fired. And she quickly reported it. And he was a good worker. And other people just, they missed too many days. You had to write people up for that. And I didn't like having to do that, but it was part of it. But a lot of it, being an assistant manager, is you had to be able to do everything. I mean, everything. Like, I had to cut fabric, mix paints, activate a cell phone and electronics, sell a hunting and fishing license, sell a gun. And selling a gun was seriously complicated. Like, you had to go through a bunch of questions. You had to make sure the gun assembled, and you had to walk out with it. So it was complicated. There was so much stuff you had to know how to do. And say you were the only one in the store, you might be cutting fabric one minute, and then you got a customer complaining they had to wait 2 minutes mixing paint. So you got to mix their paint, and you got to do a gun sale. So you're running around the store, because I walked 15 plus miles a day. And yeah, that was yet another place that was like, all right, you're going to do all this stuff, but you're going to be dressed in a button-up, nice khaki pants, and dress shoes. So you're going to be unloading a truck that's 200 degrees, and you'll get to sweat because you can't work in anything but that, because you got to look important. So you might sweat through a shirt, or you got to I even had to operate a forklift. I got trained to do that. I got trained to use the electronic pallet jack. And those pallet jacks, if anything got stuck under them, it would stop them. Anything got stuck under the wheels, that was it. You couldn't use it, you couldn't do anything with it. And the electronic jack, you just had to be careful with it, because you're pulling down huge pallets that might weigh 1,000 pounds, and you might run it into another pallet that weighs significantly less and break some stuff. And I think that's what led to stuff being sold to dirt cheap and whatnot, was stuff like that happening. And the forklift could only drive on dry, even ground, because it would slip and slide if there was any bit of moisture. But it was fun to drive, because if you did that, you got out of doing any real work, which was the hard part. And something else I had to do, Photo Lab, if they needed to build like a custom photo, I had to do that. So there's all that stuff you have to do, and you better know how to do it as good as anyone else, because the customers never stop coming. But that wasn't, like, cutting fabric wasn't that bad. But where you sit as assistant store manager, the shit runs uphill to you and downhill to you. Anything an associate does wrong is your fault. Anything the co-manager does wrong is your fault. Anything the store manager does wrong is your fault. And at one point they sent me to another store, and it didn't really make a lot of sense to me, because it was 45 minutes from where I lived, and they pay good mileage. Like, people act like Walmart's cheap, but they pay 55 cents a mile to drive. And I went to that store, but what didn't make sense to me, I talked to the manager, I was like, well, 2 of the people I work with live up here by your store. You didn't want them? No. Because what happened was they called me over, they said, hey, you're going to that store. For how long? Don't know. Maybe permanent. I was like, oh, okay. I guess I have no say in this. Whatever. But another guy kind of clued me in. He said, yeah, man, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. Get paid mileage. But I went to the other store, and it was great. They thought I did a great job when I really didn't. But it looked like they did not care. There one time they called me, and I thought it was something serious, but the other assistant manager's like, we're getting donuts, we wanted to see if you wanted one. Or they call me, hey, we're getting Chinese, we're trying to see if you want some. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So that part was great. But the store was one of the original Super Walmarts, so it was poorly designed. Nothing got done. It was basically in shambles. And one of the co-managers there had been there for 40 years. I can't imagine working that long. But the people at that store, they were lifers. Like, there wasn't a person I worked with that hadn't been there at least 5 years. And there were several people that had been there for 40 years. And they're just like, no big deal, 40 years. But like 2 weeks went by, and that indeterminate amount of time turned into 2 weeks. And then they were giving me the weekends off, and I came back, and that male co-manager's like, yeah, you've been getting all these weekends off. We're going to need you to work. So I had to work a good 20 days in a row. Some 12-hour days. And I don't care how good a shape you are or how much you think you can work. After about 50 hours, your productivity drops off, mentally and physically. I don't care if you get, like, you work from home and sit in a chair. Your productivity will go down. And mine did, and that's when I realized I wanted to do something else. So that's kind of what led to me leaving, but it is not a position I recommend. There was a guy that was a teacher, and he switched to being assistant store manager. I don't know why he did that. I know teaching has its issues, but teaching, you can go home at 4 o'clock. Walmart, on the days when you get off at 6, and you got something you want to do at 6:30, is the day a customer gets run over by a car, which really happened to me. Like, literally, the guy ran over another guy, and the guy was fine. Like, this was in the parking lot, they weren't going fast. But he hit the guy was so shocked and distraught at what he did, he had a heart attack. And the guy that got knocked over just thought it was funny. He said, yeah, I'm fine. Is he okay? And had to deal with that at the end of the day when you got plans at 6:30. I don't know why you do it. I don't know why you would switch from teaching, but to each their own, I guess. I don't recommend it.